What is going on, everyone? This is Damon from C4d GFX, and today we are going to attempt to recreate this. Recently, I did a little poll with my followers and asked them if there was any of my designs that they really wanted to see recreated or how to do it, or basically what we're doing now, a tutorial, and they chose this one. So, interestingly enough, it was actually a pretty heavy, complicated scene, but we're going to try and get through it. It's not going to be an exact step-by-step tutorial. A lot of what I'm going to show is the basic original shape that I created these forms out of, how I go about my process, a little bit about the textures. Essentially, I saved these textures into a live DB folder of their own, and I'll be copying them in and then just kind of going through some of their settings. I'll be copying a lot of the settings from here over into the new file, and definitely you guys can check that out. But mainly what this is more for is so that you can take this and create your own version of this, or use the techniques for just something completely different. Hopefully this is very informative and not boring. This disclaimer being, this is my very first tutorial. So, if you have any questions or comments or concerns afterwards, by all means, or even suggestions about how I could better my tutorials in the future, definitely let me know in the comments below. So let's break this down real quick, so you can kind of see where this actually all started from. We're going to turn off all our scatter. We're going to turn off all this, go all the way down, and essentially, let me turn off our camera real quick. This is it. This is where this guy completely started from. Essentially, it's a platonic, um, and I just do a lot of extrude, inner extrude, bridge to create some of this stuff, and that's it. So let's jump into a new file, and we will start building that guy, and hopefully not blow up my computer or this scene while we're trying to render. It is a very heavy scene with all this SSS and fog and particles. It's going to get crazy, but I guess we're about to find out. So let's set up our scene. I usually like to go in at about 2K, just so it's square. And we will go ahead and we will get our platonic in the scene. I believe it was a tetra. It needs to have three sides in order to look like the one that I made. So we are going to display. We're going to add two segments. So we have this extra geo in here. Hit C to make it editable. And then we are going to, I believe, if I did this correctly, we're going to grab our points, our outer points here on the edges over here. That guy, that guy, that guy. Oh, we already got that guy too. Yeah, because it's the same one. See, three. We are going to hit MS to bevel, and we're going to bevel this guy out, say 40. Maybe we'll go 50. Let's try that. Yeah, that looks better. All right, then we're going to go to, what's this actually called? Polygon mode. All right, we are going to go to polygon mode, and we are going to grab all these guys. We're going to hit I for extrude inner. We're going to deselect preserve groups, and we're going to pull in a little bit. Let's see, let's try, maybe we'll just do 5. Keep it a little bigger. Then we're going to hit D to extrude, and we're going to extrude these guys out, say about 15. Um, then what we're going to do is hit E for a selection tool, start grabbing all these guys. Should be all of them. And we're going to hit I for extrude inner again. We're going to scale down a little bit. 3 should be good. Hit D for extrude. Extrude them out a little bit. Doesn't have to be exact. Be anything you want. Really depends on the final shape you want to get. And then what we're going to do is we're going to bridge each of these together. So hit M, B to do bridge, and start dragging these guys over. Do this on all the edges. Bridge is like one of my favorite tools for doing this kind of stuff. It's great for creating holes in objects too. If you have, uh, say this was a cube, like basically we'll just go ahead. I'll show you real quick. Scroll out because that guy's big. Shut this guy off. We'll add a couple segments in here. Hit C, and then just specifically on, like, we'll do it on these guys, just these guys. Show you real quick. One way this is how I like to make uh, holes in the middle of, like, say, a cube. So we're gonna hit MS to bevel. We're gonna bevel out, and then we're gonna add, say we'll add like 20 subdivisions. We're gonna reverse it, and then hit cornering guys, and it goes away. And then basically what you do is you select this, you hit MB for bridge. Easiest way is to go into the side view, hit that guy, and voila, you've got a nice, awesome circle in the middle of a cube. So that's another thing I like to do. I'm not an expert at sub-D modeling. Mostly what I do is called dirty modeling, and that's what we're doing in this. So that's just a little tip and trick I learned. I believe I learned it from John Dickens from MotionWorks. He was doing some Legos, and he showed this technique, and I use it a lot for a lot of my work. So back to this guy. We're gonna go ahead and select that. Guess we need to. Oh, they're still selected. All right, so MB for bridge, and grab the rest of these guys. All I'm doing is I'm dragging from one edge to the mirrored edge, and it will connect them. Alrighty, and then we're gonna move this guy over. No, okay. We're gonna grab all these guys. And you can take this even further than I am. My goal here is to show you guys how I created my shape. So again, have fun, go nuts. There's no rules to doing this abstract stuff anyways. So, I mean, do whatever you want. Most likely a lot of you guys will probably take this and go, oh, that's right. I didn't think of that. I do it a lot of times. Like I'll see something and go, oh yeah, why didn't I think of doing that? Well, I didn't. So, alrighty, hit I for extrude inner again. Extrude this down a little bit. Then hit D, extrude out. Hit T to scale up just to give a little more shape to it. And then hit D for extrude again. And then same thing, MB, and start bridging all these guys. A lot of times I'll get to the end of this process and I'll realize I forgot to select something. All right, so we've got that done. Now we're going to grab all these polygons. I for extrude inner. Select the polygon. I for extrude inner. Extrude in a bit. Extrude in again. Hit T to scale in, to drag that in, just to create a little more shape to it. And then we're going to do the same thing on these points, or faces, or polygons. Extrude inner again, hit T, and drag in a bit. And that's pretty close to the base shape of the original. And now it's where the magic happens. How I go about getting my organic shapes out of these more mech looking shapes. First thing I do, subdivision surface. Crank it up a bit. That's looking pretty cool. That's doable. But what gets us that more smaller geometry that makes it look even more organic is the smoothing objects. And voila. And then you want to tweak this a little bit, like, you want to drag the strength down so it's not so crazy. Maybe do that. Reverse it a bit. I mean, you can do whatever you want. It's totally up to you. But yeah, that's the general idea. So now that you've got your bioorganic shape, so to speak. Let's make these little guys. I think I want that a little thicker on there this time. Next step is going to be going to a cloner. Put it in a cloner, make it radial. I think we had like 10 in the other one. Let's go ahead and reference. Come on. We say like an Alt Tab, like Windows has. Probably does. I just don't know about it. Anywho, so back to here. Here's our first cloner. Yeah, 1040 ZY 1030 10. So let's go back. 1040 ZY. So ZY 1040. I think most likely. Wait, we gotta do the transform. That's right. 10 tab minus 30 tab minus 10. That's pretty close. Might not be exact simply because my shape isn't exactly as the other one was, but again, mess around, tweak it, so you can get something that you want. I like to try and get so it looks like it's going inside of loops and whatnot. We might do something like that where it's a little more overlapping and crisscrossing. So it's a little different, but hey, it works. All right. So I'm going to just copy my camera and environment and lights and stuff. And I'll show you how that's all set up once we get it over here. Okay. So with this camera, I've got it set at a 20 millimeter focal length. I got it about, these are the measurements on that. I have it inside of a null, turn 90 degrees. Um, and then with the lights, I have an environment object. I have it set to 0. We can go ahead and hit this, and you can see where we're at with that. Shouldn't really be able to see anything, but with the lights, you turn the lights off, you can't actually see anything. But we do have fog in the scene. The way I have the fog set up is I just basically click to add fog, left that at 10, and these are my settings. Basically, we've got a float texture at 0 and a float texture at, oh, it's an RGB spectrum, whichever. You can use a float texture too, but basically you would just want it white. Phase, 0.25, volume, sublength. Pretty standard settings when you set this up. Most of the time you can just go in here and either add a float texture or RGB spectrum. That's going to depend a lot on the coloring you want in the post effects. We go out of the camera here, and this is where we've got our lights. We've got our main light up here, kind of angled down. That way it's not directly right on top of it, and we got one kind of opposite, a little lighter, maybe not so. Yeah, we got 40. Temperature is pretty cool. It's not quite blue. And then this one is a warmer light with less, so you get that kind of, you always want to have a warmer light on the bottom and a cooler light on top. Gives it a little more realism. So with those guys back on and we have the fog on, this is kind of where we're at right now with the fog setup. What I'm going to do though for now, just to save us on some render settings, which speaking of which, we want to go to path tracing, and I'm going to set this down to 2K samples. GI clamp down to 1. I normally do 0.2 on my adaptive sampling. Turn that guy on. And then in the camera imager, I'm pretty sure I left it at the aqua color Futura. Drag this down to black and pretty much standard settings. Now on to the fun part. We're going to start messing around with the textures. So I'm going to go ahead and download. This is the main texture that is on it. What I'm going to do is take you inside and hopefully rebuild it. Some of the stuff's probably missing. A lot of times that happens. I don't normally use the node editor. This built itself, when you do stuff. So we're going to go into how I do textures. We're going to basically, we got the roughness set to 0.1. And then we have, always on specular materials, you want to have fake shadows turned on. For the bump, we have, I believe, what I used, if I go back in and see if it loaded in these guys, in the bump, we had a noise. So I believe, let's see, it's all pretty standard. I like using the electric noise, so we're going to use that. So we're going to go in the bump, we're going to add noise, and just change it to electric. And then I don't believe there's any displacement on this guy. No, there's not. Okay. And then if we go into the medium, we have a scattering medium. These are my settings. Basically, we have a light blue, white RGB spectrum, and pretty standard. I didn't change the volume sublength, and I added 0.25 for the phase, which is pretty typical. I've seen that in a bunch of other tutorials, but it really, again, it's going to depend on your feel and what you want to do with it. So go ahead, drag that on our object, let Octane update, and that's looking pretty good. We might want to go for cubic. It might give us a little better. Now this isn't going to end up, there we go, yeah, see it changed to the color with the cubic where it looks a lot more fleshy now. Again, this isn't going to look exactly like my other, like the original example. I think we need to do a little more transform. I'm going to go back to the, see if we can get it closer again. It's still just being funny. It doesn't really want to play ball as much. Again, really depends on you and what you're looking for and what you're looking to accomplish, you know, just for the look of it and whatnot. Um, that one I think works. It's a little closer. Um, then in order to get the all these little bumps and whatnot, I used an Octane Scatter on that guy. So we're going to go ahead and grab an Octane Scatter. We're going to add, add a sphere. I'm going to stop that for a second. I'm going to drop this down to like, say 1. Drop that in the Octane Scatter. Now, something I learned, interestingly enough, with the Octane Scatter, dropping a cloner in won't work. You might be able to, let me test this theory real quick. Null, cloner, null. Nope, that didn't work either. So what I ended up finding out that worked for me is I dropped this whole thing into a connect object. And then drop the connect object into the cloner and change this to surface. And now we have spheres. Go ahead and render that real quick. And we have our basic spheres here. We're going to go ahead. At this point, what we can do, what's really cool about Octane Scatter, is it works with C4d Effectors. So we are going to grab a random effector, and we're going to drop that in the effectors. Now that's pretty crazy, so I think what we're going to do is we're going to drop this down to like, say, 10. We may randomize the scale, let's say 5, just for kitchen shiggles. That might be too much, maybe 3. But a lot of the magic of how we're going to get it to look good is actually in this itself. I don't think I had that many in the original one, but we'll leave it at 1,000 for now. We might have actually had like 2,500. And with the position, I believe this helps it stick to the surface a little more. I think for the scale, I may have used a noise for that. And same thing, I like to use electric. Maybe. Oops. Go ahead and clear that for now. It looked better the way it was anyways. So we got the basic idea there, and then again we just use the same texture on that. And then to get the outside guy, what we did is we basically just made copy of this guy, and we changed some of the parameters. I believe the cloner was bigger, so I think we went up to like, I don't know, 150. But we can go ahead and check that guy. We'll pause this real quick. Let's see what we did on the secondary guy. We had 12 at 120, and that's the 180 minus 90. So we'll try that one again. Let's see, ZY 12 120. That's 2, so I should go back to 120. Alright, and then what I did with that one is I actually had a darker version of this fleshy one. This one, I believe, did have displacement, but same thing, it was scattering medium, basically the exact same setup. In this one, in the transmission, we added a gradient, which we will go ahead and find. We had a gradient. Then, I believe this also had displacement, which it did have displacement. And again, in the image texture, what I used is this brimstone rolled machine texture, which I got from the French Monkey. TFM style, he has this all these freebies, and what he has here is he has this rolled machine everydays pack, and this is free. So I downloaded this, and this is where I got my texture. But he has a ton of awesome stuff on the site for free. He's got samples of every one of his texture packs, got elevation packs. He's got the skin controller. He's got some 3D scans. He's got the Switch asset kit. There's some samples in there that was created by my buddy Observadol. Um, he's got just a lot of really awesome stuff in here. And then he's got access to like these Manhattan Nights collections of great HDR. These scans for this pair of stuff is great. So that is what I used. I will also include a link in the description below where you can find this. So we're going to go ahead and we are going to change that to this. And hit render. Now I do have to warn you, this is a considerably heavy scene. I'm operating on 4 different GPUs right now, and it's even at 2K, it's going to take a bit to render. If I go back up to where I actually rendered it at, which let's see what my render settings were at in the previous file. Oh, we're actually, I think I'm going to drop this down. If we go back to the original. Oh wow, I actually did render that at a pretty small sample, so excellent. We are going to go down to 750 then. I may have done some post work, some denoising, maybe. I am currently on 3.08.3. I'm not using the denoiser. We might try that. We might jump over into, go ahead and make that, it is cubic. We may jump over into standalone, but probably not in this tutorial. We're getting there. We're getting pretty close. What I did end up doing is I ended up adding a couple of spheres, which we're just going to grab from the previous file. These 2 spheres that creates the lighting on the inside. So we've got this light sphere that just has this light emissive texture on it. It's only like 15 centimeters. And then we have this one. It's a little bigger. They're both, I'll just show you. It just helps create that dimension on the inside. Just a little bit of ambiance, so to speak. Let it cook for a second. And then I think, yeah, what we want to do is we want to add Octane Tags and turn off the visibility on them. Maybe not on this guy. Maybe we'll leave that one there. Just kind of. Definitely changes the tone of the lighting, which I'm not completely sure about. It actually, probably because I need to actually hit re-render on this thing. So let's hit re-render on it. Again, by no means, ladies and gentlemen, am I an expert. Honestly, none of this stuff was ever planned. When I was doing my daily designs, I would just design something in a few hours I thought looked kind of cool, and if I liked it, I posted it and hoped other people would like it as well. And that got us to here where people actually want to see how I made this. Amazing. Come on, buddy. Cook for me. Yeah, see, it's getting a little crazy in there, but I think we should be okay. There we go. Had to reboot and restart this guy. So we're going to go ahead and copy this scatter now. And in this one, we are actually going to grab this one and throw this one in here so that those bumps now are on the outside of the other one. And then the final thing we're going to do, which I actually have to open the recent one, is we are going to, let me turn out these guys, add these rings that you see here. Again, it's just a ring jumped into this cloner with these guys. I just dropped it at the bottom of the chain inside a null, inside a cloner. So we're going to go ahead, I'm just going to copy this guy. Basically, it's like 60 by 50, 56, 120 segments, height's about 15, and we'll put a fillet on it with a little bit of an edge. So I'm going to go ahead and just grab that guy, copy him over, drop it in, and what we're going to do is we're just going to create a null and drop this guy into the null. Actually, I did that completely wrong. What we need to create is the null needs to be, sorry, the null needs to go underneath the cloner. This needs to go in here, and then this needs to go in the null. And there we've got the rings. Now, since obviously I don't have the exact same settings on this cloner as I had on the other one, we will double check that again. Transform is 180 minus 90. So let's see what happens when I try that. 180 tab minus 90. So much prettier. All right, now we are getting there. Go ahead and hit cook again. And that is pretty much where we are at. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to double check my settings. I'm going to go back up to that many samples because I rarely do I ever render at less than 2K samples. But you never know with this. So let's just double check a few things here with our lights. We got our lights. We can add a little bit of bloom. It's not really necessary in this, but let's just see what happens when we do. If this will actually cook and do anything. There we go. So yeah, so this is pretty much the general idea. Just kind of a breakdown of what we did here. I'm gonna go ahead and pause this guy over here. Is basically just, we created this basic shape right here out of a platonic. Did a little push and pull with the extrude inner, and a little bit of bridge. And then also one last thing that I do a lot of is I create like my own, dust and whatnot in the scene. Let's see if we hit this scene. You can see these particles in here. A lot of times what I'll do is I'll throw an emissive texture on it. Sometimes you don't even have to use an emissive texture. Um, we might even we'll just copy that just in case. So we're going to copy that, and then we're going to delete that. And a lot of times I'll go into the opacity, and it's just drop it down so it's barely showing up. And then depending on your camera angle and your lens that you're using, you know, it should update properly. And a lot of times with the post effects, if you add like a tilt shift or like a bokeh effect is basically what I'm trying to achieve here, but it usually depends. And I think the problem it's not doing what I want it to do is because I don't think I actually have this texture on these discs for some reason. There we go. We can actually probably, in order to see them better, a lot of times it's easier just to have an emission in there so that they'll show up and they'll glow, and then you can just turn the opacity down, whatever suits your needs, basically. But that is essentially the rig. I'm going to go ahead and just check that real quick, see what we have for the effects. We got that, that, and that. I'm going to copy and paste this into our other file. Turn everything back on. Bring those in. So you can see there's a lot of particles and whatnot going on in here. So it can get pretty crazy depending on your system. And what we'll do is we will save incremental real quick in case it crashes again on us, and we will hit cook. And again, it's not exactly how the other one is. A lot of it's just positioning, and also the fact that, again, I did this a year and a half ago, and I didn't expect to be making a tutorial on it. So that's pretty much it. I do usually do a lot of my posts in Photoshop. It's very minor. I have the Google Nick tools. It was free for a while. It is no longer free. It is a good resource, but you can just basically a lot of what that is like curves adjustments. And I add like a bokeh effect, which will blur out the edges and whatnot. Some people think that the post isn't necessary, and a lot of times it's not. Um, so that is basically it for the Phlegm tutorial. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, please let me know in the comments below. Again, I'll include the links to find me as well, like my Instagram. You can pretty much just go instagram.com ccidgfx, which again I'll include the link. Same as my website. You can see my demo reel and some of my other work. Um, Again, French Monkey. This is where I got the asset pack from, the World Machine asset pack. I'm hopefully going to be doing another tutorial if this one doesn't kind of go bad. If there's a good enough response, I'll do one. There was a request for another design of mine, so I'm going to attempt to do the next tutorial on this guy. Again, a lot of that's just like a lot of extruding, inner extruding, beveling, bridging, and everything to create these little complex structures. The texture I did for the worn edges, scratch, I actually is from this tutorial here from Chad Ashley, which I'll go through. I'll kind of show you my setup and whatnot, but if you want to do probably a better job at the texture, I would go to this link here, Grayscale Gorilla, and Chad Ashley did this awesome tutorial. So, without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and sign off of this guy. I appreciate everybody that's watching. Also, again, this is my first tutorial, so if there's anything that you feel would help make a tutorial more informative or sound better or work better or just be better overall for you guys going forward, please don't hesitate to let me know in the comments below. I'd like to do a lot more of these. It seems like some people are really interested in some of my designs, and it's really fun to do this. Nerve-wracking, but fun. So again, my name is Damon, CCID Graphics. Stay tuned, and thank you for watching.